So federal judges are ordering the Trump administration to continue funding the nation's largest food aid program despite the ongoing government shutdown. Both of these judges say that contingency funds must be used. That comes as those food and aid benefits were expected to run out soon. Senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram has the latest update from Capitol Hill tonight.
Lines at food banks near a military base in Texas. Service members among those worried about getting paid if the shutdown continues.
I think there's a lot of anxiety, the whole unknown of what's going to happen here in the next several weeks.
The shutdown was supposed to suspend SNAP benefits this weekend. Americans exasperated.
I don't think any of us should be looking for some white knight to save us in Washington.
Democrats argue the administration has a rainy day fund for food aid.
They lied to the American people. These people are stone cold extremist liars.
But Agriculture Secretary Brooke Rollins contends the law hamstrings her department.
It's called a contingency fund, and by law, contingency fund can only flow when the underlying fund is flowing.
Frustration also flying high at the nation's airports. A ground delay in Boston of more than 2 hours, 1 hour in Houston, as airports contend with staffing issues. President Trump lashing out at Democrats.
I don't know what's wrong with them. They've never done a thing like this. They've become crazed lunatics. It's their fault. Everything is their fault.
President Trump now imploring Senate Republicans to nuke the filibuster to pass the GOP bill and end the shutdown. Republicans are skeptical of the president's demand.
What you're seeing is an expression of the president's anger at the situation. He is as angry as I am.
But Republicans worry that with no filibuster, Democrats could then pass universal health care and D.C. statehood whenever they eventually regain the majority.
We got to be careful what we wish for here.
The office of Senate Majority Leader John Thune says his view on the filibuster is, quote, unchanged. Other filibuster modifications focused on nominations, not bills. Shannon?
All right, Chad Pergram on the Hill. Thank you, Chad.
All right, Fox News Sunday host Shannon Bream is with us now. So let's break down what Brooke was talking about here. This is where the money was found at the 11th hour. $2.5 billion for the Military Housing Fund from the One Big Beautiful Bill, $1.4 billion from Research Development Test and Evaluation Fund, and $1.4 billion from the Defense Department Procurement Account for Shipbuilding. They were able to, and J.D. Vance was saying this a couple of days ago, again, find the money to keep the active duty troops paid and their families, of course.
Yeah, and that now enters into the conversation this administration is having with a couple of federal judges about, okay, if you move that money to pay the troops, why can't you move money to pay for SNAP, which hits tomorrow, and that's 42 million people across the country. We're just getting in word, you guys noted some of it, that it looks like one of the federal judges in Massachusetts is going to tell them, you got to pay this and you got to figure it out. Just a ruling now coming in apparently from a Rhode Island judge, or some indication in a hearing today. That judge will also tell this administration they have to figure out a way how to do it. And keep in mind, a lot of our military members do use SNAP. There are a lot of people who are working in this country who can't make ends meet, and they want to know how that's going to work.
And this is why, take a look at these numbers, which I had not seen as starkly before. It's quite appalling. Median pay for those, this is not up there, but first year, as Brooke just reported, you sign up, you're going to get paid $25,000 a year. You stick it out for another 6 years, you might get up to $48,000. Here you go, median pay $52,000. Shannon, maybe my perspective is warped because I grew up in New York, I live in Washington, D.C. That is not enough money to live off of, especially if you are a parent.
So a lot of our military members will live on a base, but not everyone does. And so some of that housing is covered. But we know that a lot of military members do also exercise government benefits. They need to keep their families together.
Right.
And one of the things we have to think about as they keep coming to these cliffs of figuring out a way to pay them and get through one more pay period, President Trump has said he'll do whatever he has to make sure the military gets paid. So it's worked so far. But the last thing we want is for somebody to be on deployment and worry about how their kids and their spouse at home are going to
who
eat.
Makes $25,000 a year is overseas and then not even getting paid paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah, and we know that over half the people in this country report that they live paycheck to paycheck, and a lot of those folks are military.
So in terms of SNAP and whether or not the government can find the money to do it, the judge is Indira Talwani in Massachusetts who says it's likely illegal what they're doing, and she wants to know by Monday if they could pay for it. Here's what the New York Times reported on the SNAP court hearing yesterday. Entering the hearing, top officials in the Trump administration had acknowledged that they had billions of dollars left over across multiple federal accounts, including money in an emergency reserve specifically for SNAP. But lawyers for the Justice Department signal that the administration could not or would not use those funds despite the looming shortfall. Can you explain that?
Well, one of the arguments apparently is that some of the reserve funds for SNAP are specifically for natural disasters. We know those are going to come, and they say we don't want to deplete that because we're going to need it at some point. But they also say, despite the fact that the Trump administration did allow SNAP to remain funded during the shutdown 2018 to 2019, they say things are different this time. Different funds have been expended. There are different laws they claim tie their hands, and that Congress has got to do something to make that money movable and fungible again. They say they just can't. But the judge did not sound like she's buying it. It sounds like this judge in Rhode Island today also does not buy it.
She was also saying kind of like, guys, it's the easiest thing in the world. I don't even know why we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
I don't think anything in the government is easy these days in Washington.
I expect this will be a big topic of discussion on Fox News Sunday.
It will be. We're going to have the speaker with us to talk about where are the off-ramps for the shutdown. We've also got Senator Tim Scott with us and a couple more guests we hope to lock in this afternoon.
All right. Looking
Busy
forward to
Sunday.
that. Good luck with the locking in.
Yeah, that's always the thing. Friday afternoon, lock it in.
I mean, it's a pretty great rundown for a shutdown.
It is?
Yeah,
Good
it
on
is.
you.
Maybe we'll get some information that gets us closer.
All right. Thanks, Shen.
Thanks, guys.
Greg, you have some thoughts on the royal bathroom.
I love that he's renovating the bathroom, or renovated, because it's so fitting after dealing with 4 years of Joe Biden's crap that we have to do that. Metaphorically and literally, the White House needed a serious house cleaning. The Democrats treated America the way frat boys treated a cheap motel on spring break. You need a complete fumigation. That is not a pattern on the bedspread. Trust me. In terms of this hysteria, it kills me I mean, obviously, this is more theater. You know, somehow Republicans and Trump enjoy inflicting pain on America. These are the people that ignored crime waves, that ignored the illegal immigrant gangs that came over, that said inflation was good for you. They do not have, again, we do not have to give them any of our credibility at this point. They covered up for an incapacitated president. So they know nothing about inflicting pain. I wish they would put some effort into the real fears instead of the imaginary ones. The imaginary fears are basically what we used to call luxury problems. So instead of going after the real fears that Trump understood because he spoke to people, crime, cost of living, public education is an actual fear. The imaginary fears of Democrats are the luxury beliefs that you can have time to indulge, whether it is climate change, transphobic bathrooms. Is this bathroom okay for other people? Because you are well protected from the consequences of the problems you actually ignore. So you don't have to worry about crime because you have security. If you tabulated the opportunity costs of fabricated fears just on climate change alone, it's $1.3 trillion a year that was spent. And you actually had applied that to actual problems, drug addiction, urban blight, police salaries, public education, the fire risk in California. How many problems could have been solved if we didn't sink all of that money into an imaginary fear? I guess what I'm saying is, in the future, fear the fear, because it's going to come again. They're going to have a new one.
Well, New Yorkers don't fear the fear. They're about to elect a socialist who's going to exponentially make all those problems much, much worse. Well said, Greg. So we're on day 30. Yes, you're welcome. We're on day 31 of the shutdown, Joey. Yeah. And if it's not lifted by Thanksgiving, is it going to lift ever? And what will it take to get us out of this impasse?
Some Democrat was on yesterday and was like, yeah, I think Veterans Day is the no later than date. It's like, where do these days come from? It was when the new premiums come out, you know, around 1st of November was going to be the no later than day, announced Veterans Day. This is what I'll tell you. Part of this segment is the idea that Trump is floating ending the filibuster, the nuclear option. You know, Vance was speaking with Erica Kirk, and he was asked about deploying the National Guard. And the question was, do you support doing this knowing that the next president might be a Democrat and do it as well? And Vance said, don't not do something you need to do in fear that the Democrats might do it next, because they've already done it. And when you talk about the filibuster, for example, it was Harry Reid in 2013 that brought in the nuclear option for presidential confirmations. So now Republicans moved it forward for judicial, for the Supreme Court. So this old statesman's way of governing is a bygone era. It's gone. It's not here anymore. It might have died with the old statesmen, but it's not here anymore. We have to come to terms with that. We can miss it, long for it, but it's like missing your grandparents' house. It doesn't exist anymore. Even if the house does, they don't. That's not how we're governed now. That may change again one day, but it's not how we're governed now. We are evenly split by the numbers, by the votes, by the rhetoric, by the issues. I don't like it. I don't necessarily advocate for ending the filibuster, but this idea that don't do it now because they might do it to you later, they already have.
All right.
So why not?
So, Harold, take us into Washington. Take us into the chamber. You were a member of the House of Representatives, so you know this world inside out. The Senate is supposed to be the upper chamber, but they're acting like a bunch of babies. I actually fear for this country if we're just going on a 51-vote majority in the Senate. It means they've completely given up on working together. What does the nuclear option mean long-term for both parties?
Happy Halloween. Good to be with you. I think a couple of things. I've heard John Thune, and I've heard some Republicans, John Thune, who I served in Congress with and like a great deal and respect, say that a lot of why Democrats won't come to the table, Kennedy, in the Senate to try to end this moment and get the government back open is because they're afraid of the far left in the party. And they're probably right. I think the fact that John Thune, who I think is a deal maker, and Mike Johnson, the reason they can't sit down with Democrats is because President Trump doesn't want them to. Number two, to Joey's point, which ties into yours, we may have left this era where we want some sort of statesmanship or we want government to work in a certain way. I hope they don't end the filibuster. I think one of the great protections that the minority, not racial minority, but the political minority has in this country when politics is being litigated like this is that the majority just can't run over the minority unless there are rules that are followed. I will say this, though. If I were president of the United States, as a Democrat, and I had a Democrat-controlled Congress by 1 seat and a Republican-controlled Senate by 1 seat, I think it behooves the leader of the country when you have this kind of silly, immature politics happening on both sides, and I'll blame Democrats more for the sake of the argument. You need a president that will come to the table and say, here's what we're going to do. Here's why we have to do this. And go negotiate with them, and let's figure out an answer to this. For the life of me, I don't understand how we can be, and the president says this often, we're the hottest country in the world, yet 42 million people are on food stamps in America. Put aside that the funding is not there, but we have one out of eight Americans experiencing this. This, to me, is as fundamental a problem as anything. But we are faced with a crisis right now.
And we also have an obesity epidemic. The irony, Harold.
Right, and because the food is so, this is where Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is right. I hope he focuses on this. I just can't for the life of me understand why people won't come back, make the Republicans agree to deal with the health care premiums and get the government back open. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, people suffering like this is something that put aside being inconvenienced, flying. You have 42 million people who are losing their health care, are going to see premiums go up. Let's do the least that government's supposed to do, which is to provide these kind of benefits for everyday Americans. So I'm as discouraged as you are. I hope Joey's wrong. I hope we get back to a moment where statesmanship reigns, but
we're going to have to throw all the clowns out if we're going to get there. Speaking of clowns, Paul, if you had known that
you're not a clown,
that the former vice president had such a potty mouth, would you have voted for her?
I think she's just wonderful. She's so authentic. Here's the thing. Look, let's try to capture all the commentary here that's coming from the left. These days on the left, the Democratic Party right now, you're either an anarchist or an elitist. And the elitists want to be down with the anarchists. And that's what's behind all those statements, right? You got Kamala cursing. Where's that coming from? All of a sudden, she's trying to show us how street she is, right? They're trying to reach out to the middle class and people, everyday Americans that they've completely lost. Van Hollen, right? Republicans just enjoy watching people suffer. Here's Van Hollen. Comes from a State Department background, his family. Massachusetts boarding school, Swarthmore, where he got a BA in philosophy. All right, he got a master's from Harvard JFK School, and I'd like to dump on that, but I went there too, so I can't. Georgetown Law. This guy didn't have a job till he was almost 30, all right? And he's telling us now how we're supposed to live. He's never had a real job. He's never been scuffed up, much like Biden. He was never in the real working sector, and now they're telling us how horrible we are. Bottom line is this: if you notice, the narrative has changed. Initially, it was we want to get rid of the health care. We want to take away health care from all the middle class. Now, that didn't work, all right? Very clearly, the polling showed it didn't work because it came back to Obamacare, and they didn't want to own that. So now, all of a sudden, it's snap. We want everybody to starve, and that's what they're going to go with. Recognize something. The filibuster was not put in place by the Founding Fathers. They had never perceived that. There was no filibuster till about mid-1800s. So this is not something that is anti-constitutional. I hope they don't get rid of it as well. I agree with you. But that said, it's not like this is so far out of the norm. It was something that was put in as a rule in the Senate to make sure that it was more deliberative, that you didn't have the tyranny of the majority and all of that. But at some point, if it's going to regularly devolve to the point that our entire government apparatus freezes, well, you know what? Then maybe it's time to go. And maybe the people voted for a majority, even if it's one vote. At least the thing moves forward. But the bottom line from where I sit right now is you have a very simple way to do this. The continuing resolution, everybody gets to eat, and we cut the deal. As before we came on the air, just to close the loop, 2 judges have ruled that they got to use the discretionary funds. They got to find money to pay the SNAP benefits, okay? Look at what they did. It's such blatant forum shopping, all right? 2 Obama judges, it was in Massachusetts, I forget what the other one is. Both of them Obama appointed. So very clearly this has gone into the hyper-political stuff that, by the way, always gets overturned when it goes up the chain. So this idea that they're using leverage, that's a bad optic. Pass a continuing resolution, get people fed, and then let's cut a deal.
All right, here we go. A huge programming note. Jesse Waters has an exclusive interview with Erica Kirk this coming Wednesday, November 5th at 8 p.m. It is Erica's first sit-down interview since Charlie's assassination.
Of the White House National Economic Council. Kevin, great to have you with us. Thank you for joining me on this Friday afternoon. Obviously, you know, it's Halloween. People are hoping to have a lot of fun this afternoon, but they're also worried about these benefits that are running out. We heard from President Trump just moments ago, and we played that, but we also heard from him on Truth Social, and he talked about the filibuster, and he said that the Democrats have gone stone cold crazy. The choice is clear. Initiate the nuclear option, get rid of the filibuster, and make America great again. So this is something that Republicans could do, and they would be allowed. They could push this through and reopen the government with 53 votes. What's your reaction to that from the president, and what do you see happening next, Kevin?
Right. Well, the president is right that we've got to get the government open because we've got people who aren't getting the food support they need. We're about to use emergency funds from the Department of Agriculture because of a liberal judge ruling that we disagree in the law on. But then we don't have our emergency funds in case we have a hurricane or we have an emergency, a food emergency. And so we've got to get the government open. We've got to do it as soon as possible. And the Democrats really don't have a plan. We don't really understand what they're doing anymore. And the one thing I think that they are doing is just trying to stop the president's momentum because he's had, just think about it, we had this historic trip to Asia with deals left and right and a great deal with China for our soybean farmers. And so they're trying to slow us down, but they can't slow us down. We continue to work every day to achieve the president's vision. And when they finally do open up Congress, we're going to have everything ready for them to go the very first day. And so they're not slowing us down. But that appears to be what their intent is.
Understood. But, you know, with regard to the options that Republicans have right now, because Democrats seem dug in, although we keep hearing that they're about to, that there might be a shift coming. But do you support, do you agree with the president that it's time to do the nuclear option and just push this government reopen through on 53 votes? Do you agree with that as his economic advisor?
I always agree with the president. I think that he is impatient, and everybody should be impatient. And the fact is that he's urging the Senate leaders to think about other options. If the Democrats, they might well try to keep the government shut down forever, as far as we know, because they're not making any sense whatsoever. And so the president has put something on the table that hopefully the Democrats recognize that the filibuster has been there since the beginning of the Senate. and that they're threatening basically our traditions because they hate President Trump so much. And so hopefully that makes them change their mind. But if they don't, then we're not going to let them keep the government shut forever.
Well,
we're not going to let them starve the American people.
We know the Majority Leader Thune is against the filibuster change, as is the Speaker of the House. But we have you on record as supporting calling in that nuclear option and ending the filibuster.
If we can't get the government open, then what else are we going to do?
All right, let's listen to Senator Booker on this with regard to the SNAP benefits. Watch.
His intention really is to use hunger as a political weapon, hunger of our children, families, disabled. It's really striking to me, especially because we do have the constitutional authority to use the discretionary funds because it's been done before. And that's what really surprises me, is the level of cruelty that is marking Republican leadership right now.
What's your response to that, and how well do you think this change is going to work? Because the federal judges in 2 courts in New England have now said that reserve money has to be triggered and released.
Look. If you want people to get their SNAP benefits, if you want them to get their food, if you want people to be able to trust that the airports are open, then the Democrats need to do what their constitutional duty is, which is they need to open the government. And so the idea that when they haven't appropriated funds for us, and we've got a clear legal mandate to keep some aside in case there's a national emergency, the idea that they're going to take our rainy day fund and spend it, like what happens if 3 weeks from now when all the money's gone and they still haven't appropriated anything, what happens then? The Democrats need to think ahead. They need to get the government open. And the president has said he's happy to talk to them once we get the government open.
Before I let you go, Kevin, I want to ask you about a different topic, and it's something that we've talked about in terms of the layoffs that we're seeing, AI related in many ways. We've seen UPS, we've seen Amazon, and word is that there are other big layoffs that are coming. How concerned are you as the president's national economic advisor about what is coming down the pipeline for white collar management jobs in America?
Right. Well, right now we're seeing high income growth, high median wage growth. The economy's growing almost at 4%. And the labor market data was a little bit weaker than expected, but right now we don't even have labor market data. In fact, we'll never know the unemployment rate for October because the Democrats have shut down the government and they're not doing the survey. The fact is that people are changing professions, but job creation is still positive, and income growth is really positive, and so is GDP growth. We're very bullish on the economy right now.
But when you look out, you're talking about the conditions that exist now and the numbers that you rightfully say we don't have because the government is shut down, and we know you want it to be reopened as soon as possible. But economists always have to look into the future. And I'm wondering what you think the impact on the U.S. economy is if we continue to see these kinds of layoffs in people who've been, went to college, they're in a white collar job, they've been there for 3 to 5 years, and they're about to get pink slips.
Well, obviously, our heart goes out to anyone who loses a job. But right now, job creation is positive. And when people are using AI at work, they're becoming more productive and seeing high
But you see these layoffs that are happening at UPS, at Amazon, and we understand there's financial services groups that are also about to announce things along these lines as well. Are you hearing that?
Well, I read the news stories as well as you, Martha, but what I'm saying is that people who get AI at work, there's a huge academic literature that's showing that it's making them more productive and making their wages go up. And so if you're unfortunate enough to have your firm say, okay, I'm going to replace you with whatever, AI or someone else, then if you move to a new profession, AI is going to help you train faster, help your wage go up more. And so labor market is positive. The GDP growth and income numbers are all real positive. And so we see the headlines, but those are headlines that you see every year that this or that company is readjusting its labor force. But in the aggregate, the numbers are positive.
All right. So you're saying that you don't think that there's any AI sort of reorganization of job structure coming in the United States of America?
AI is making people more productive, and so that's making it so that some firms can make the same amount of stuff with fewer workers, but then those workers go get another job, and that's why labor markets are looking so solid right now.
Oh, well, that's a positive outlook. I hope that is accurate. Last question before I let you go. With regard to the enrollment opening, and you've got an average of some of these premiums on health care, on the extended health care benefits that happened during COVID that are about to expire. about to go up. If somebody logs on November 1st tomorrow and they look at their premium and it shot up in a place like New Jersey, for example, 175% the day before, 2 days before the election, what do you think is the impact of that?
Well, I think that the Democrats think that they can shut the government down and not have a negotiation over these things, which are, by the way, premium increases that they voted for, and then blame Republicans. But the American people aren't that stupid. They understand that Democrats have shut down the government, and any disruption to anything that's going on right now in government is their fault because they won't open it.
All right. We'll see. Day 31. Kevin Hassett, always good to have you with us. Thank you very much for joining me, National Economic Advisor to the President. Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thank you.
Fox News alert: tensions, anger, and fear for millions of Americans caught up in the federal government shutdown, now in day 31. U.S. Senate Democrats are under extreme pressure after spending yet another full week blocking Republicans' efforts to pass a clean funding bill and reopen the government, pay people, and put cash back in critical programs. Democrats are getting addicted, it would seem, to a drug of emotional violence, toying with people's suffering. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. The pain of the shutdown is being felt. It's about to get infinitely worse. Federal food assistance to more than 42 million Americans expires tomorrow. Also at risk, the Head Start preschool program for little ones across the country. And open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act. That's right. Democrats have said on the Hill they are holding out in the Senate for some deal to lower the cost of Obamacare. Well, it's a mystery because right now they expect people to pay for that enrollment during a shutdown when millions of them are not getting paychecks. Republicans are not the only ones asking Dems to end this all. So far, 5 unions and 4 of the largest airlines have called on lawmakers on the left to pass Republicans' clean bill to fund the government. Watch this.
The biggest way to ensure the safety, security, and reliability of our national air traffic control system is to pass a clean continuing resolution.
Everyone knows, the Vice President, Congress, is that this shutdown needs to end now. It has to happen now. These guys need to convene, say yes to that clean CR, get this thing back on track, and again, restore that confidence in the American public.
But let's get a clean CR and get that negotiation done behind closed doors without the pressure and without putting the American workers and the American economy at risk.
Dems are adrift with no common sense. I mean, obviously. These people know what they're talking about. They're leading people. They need this to stop now. And the pressure on Dems, struggling to pinpoint exactly what is in the Republican bill that warrants a shutdown, is mind-boggling. But it's true. It's a fact. Why can't they say what's in it? Watch this.
Should Democrats pass a standalone bill to fund SNAP benefits?
Good morning. Well, let's be clear. Republicans run the House. They run the Senate.
Is that a yes, then, that there should be a vote on the standalone legislation?
I'm here. My Republican colleagues are on vacation. I don't play politics. I want a clean bill that focuses on the American people.
They did have a clean CR vote on September 19th in the House. Did you vote for it?
I disagree with your characterization and want to make sure that we're very clear about what Republicans have been doing. Any bill that they've put forth, they've always had some extra stuff to it. There's always been a poison pill to it.
What were the poison pills of the clean CR or the continuing resolution? You say it's not clean, that was voted on in the House in mid-September.
Here's what's important. I think what you're trying to do is shift the responsibility to Democrats.
She doesn't know. She doesn't know what the poison pills were in that clean CR. There aren't any, and she can't make an interesting or correct argument because she doesn't know what's in it, or because there aren't any, or both. It's beyond sad. It's disgusting. Republican Senator Ashley Moody in Focus coming up. First, let's begin with senior congressional correspondent Chad Pergram on Capitol Hill. Chad.
Harris, good morning. We're slamming into the first major inflection point of the shutdown. Travel delays coupled with the lack of SNAP benefits is a volatile political mixture. There's worry about holiday travel. The administration is blaming Democrats for the shutdown.
I know the day after Thanksgiving is the busiest travel day in America, and if our airports are shut down, it'll mean that highways are more congested, and they'll be the Grinches who stole Thanksgiving.
Democrats are raging that the Trump administration is not doling out SNAP benefits during the shutdown. That's always happened during previous shutdowns. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries tore into the GOP for saying it could not provide SNAP benefits.
Republicans hold press conferences every day, and you know what they do? They lie to the American people, and they haven't spoken a word of truth to the American people other than what Mike Johnson admitted today, which is that they want to rip away SNAP benefits from 42 million Americans.
Secretary of Agriculture Brooke Rollins appeared with House Speaker Mike Johnson at the Capitol today. Rollins said she is barred from tapping an emergency fund for SNAP.
That's the contingency fund that we would use to send more money into the vulnerable communities that are harmed by a specific event like a hurricane. Even if it could flow, it doesn't even cover half of the month of November. So here we are again in 2 weeks having the exact same conversation.
Delta Airlines and United want the shutdown to end. Airline delays are increasing. Now, this morning, there are 50-minute delays related to staffing in Austin and 67 minutes in Nashville. Harris?
Chad, thank you. Even the left-leaning Washington Post has had enough from Democrats. The editorial board argues, quote, the right answer is to reopen the government with a clean funding bill, ideally for a full year, to get food stamps flowing and federal workers back in office, and then have a debate about ACA, that is Obamacare subsidies. Democrats openly acknowledge that they refuse to do this because it would mean giving up their leverage. If they persist, it could mean families start to go hungry. Senator Ashley Moody, Republican of Florida, member of Joint Economic, Judiciary, and Homeland Security Committees. Great to have you today. Break this down for me and tell me, are there any signs of something happening before the expiration of SNAP?
Well, I am so glad that you showed some of those clips and the responses of the Democrats. What's becoming abundantly clear is they cannot explain, even when being pleaded to by liberal-leaning organizations, unions, liberal media outlets, on and on and on. Please pass a clean funding bill. This is a bipartisan bill to open back up the government. They have nothing to say. It's because they have blindly followed Chuck Schumer in his quest to appease a radical base and save his hide. And they don't know why they're doing it. They're just blindly following him and neglecting to pay attention not only to the voters that put them there, but to their responsibilities to serve in a good faith way as a senator and operate the government. And the real challenge is, I believe their entire point of this thing was to shut down the government.
Yeah.
Because you now have people that have been elected into office who don't like America, that want it to look like an entirely different country than it was set up to be. They want government to tell you how to live your life. They want you to tell you how to run your markets. I mean, it's a really scary time when you have people elected to office and their goal is to shut down the United States of America. And that's where we are right now.
You know, it's so interesting, too, what you're saying about Representative Janelle Bynum in the House. She had already decided she was against this thing and clearly didn't even know what was in the clean CR or if there were any poison pills in it that she should vote against. But she'd made that decision, and the power doesn't even really rest there now. It's in the Senate. And if the Senate does the right thing and reopens the government, that doesn't have anything to do with irrelevant Bynum at this point, because it passed the House. Like, I don't think she understands how this works.
No, and the challenge here is that you have senators that aren't stepping back and listening to the people that elected them to open this government back up. And that is a scary time. I mean, Congress is the American people. We are the place where the American people have their voices heard. And it appears we have senators right now that are ignoring the people that put them in office to represent them. I mean, there is a majority call to open back up this government. And it is a scary thing. And I think that's why you're hearing frustration from President Trump and so many other people where, like,
unions,
this is something we haven't had
CEOs.
to deal with in the past.
Yeah. All right, let's get to this. We have been talking about the real pain American families are facing as Democrats refuse to reopen the government, admittedly for political leverage. We know that from Katherine Clark, right? She spoke on behalf, I guess, of all Democrats when she spoke as a lawmaker last week. The images are stark and very sad. People are already lining up for food assistance at pantries across America, and many of those facilities cannot keep up with the now empty shelves. I mean, just in days. And the people who defend our nation are hit hard too. Many military families live paycheck to paycheck, especially those who've just entered, those younger fighters that we have. And so their early salaries matter, and they qualify for them to make federal food assistance. So they're banking on this not expiring this weekend. This video from a YMCA in Killeen, Texas, operates a food bank for service members. It has been overwhelmed with service members bracing for missed paychecks soon if the government stays closed. Watch this.
Many folks are deployed right now overseas from Fort Hood and from other locations. And the last thing you want to have when you're deployed overseas is be worrying about the next paycheck and how do you take care of your family who are back wherever they live in the U.S.
Senator Moody, we are blessed to have those men and women in concert around the world for us in our military. They will stay on their jobs and hold our sovereignty and our values. They ought to get paid to do it. All of these people. And by the way, this is the percentage of the population using SNAP right now, while you give us your reaction.
And this is the last thing we want them to be thinking about right now at this time in our world. I come from a military family. It is heartbreaking. The oldest boy in our family is right now in active duty. He said to me, I have over 100 people that are cold and wet and just came off a training exercise, and they have no idea if they're going to get paid. Are they going to get paid? What can I tell them? This is the longest shutdown in American history, the longest full shutdown in American history. It tells you something about the people that have been elected to the Senate that aren't paying attention to their role, their good faith role as a senator to push this government and open it back up for the people. And they can do that. We already have Democrats voting with us. We just need a few more to stand up, grow a backbone, and vote to serve their country. It is incredibly important right now. I'm the newest senator. This place is broken. We need to fix it. And I'm pleading with my colleagues. Let's open back up the government so we can serve the people.
Well, I tell you what, you're educating us, because you're right. On Monday, we will tie the longest ever. And that's because everybody's already leaving Washington. They started leaving yesterday. So it's almost like the weekend doesn't even count, but it counts for those families. It counts. I'm so glad you were in focus today. Thank you.
Great to be with you.
Right, as Democrats move further and further to the left, squad member Jasmine Crockett is sensing opportunity. The firebrand Texas Congresswoman says she is thinking about running for the Senate.
I've heard you talk about the potential of a Senate run. Like, how seriously are you weighing that?
I am seriously weighing it to the extent that I'm about to spend a lot of money to get data.
I'm curious what you think the Democratic Party's brand is right now, how voters see it, and what you say to people who think that the Dems, maybe on the shutdown they're fighting, but overall that they're not fighting hard enough.
We are not perceived as fighters, and we are perceived as weak.
All right, so let's bring in Karl Rove, former Deputy Chief of Staff to President George W. Bush and a Fox News contributor. So there you have another Democratic firebrand sucking all the oxygen out of the old guard. Jasmine Crockett saying the party is weak. When you take a look at it, Jasmine Crockett, AOC, Mamdani, rapidly becoming the new face of the Democratic Party. It's almost, Karl, like the Democrats are having a Tea Party moment.
Well, at least the Tea Party came from the bottom up, from grassroots Americans who were deeply concerned about deficits, debt, and inside government special deals like Solyndra. This thing is from the top down. These are from people who think they know better than the rest of America. Behind me is the capital of the state of Texas. Jasmine Crockett was in that capital as a state legislature. She was a complete non-entity with a big mouth. She carried that to Washington. She may think that she can run for the U.S. Senate. I hope she does run for the U.S. Senate, because it will continue the Democratic tradition of, since 1994, of failing to win a single statewide election. If she thinks AOC's policies and Bernie Sanders' policies are going to win the hearts and minds of Texans, she's kidding herself.
All right, so let's go to Kamala Harris because she, like Karine Jean-Pierre, is on a book tour. It appears to be in some interviews doing about as well as Karine Jean-Pierre did. Here she is with Jon Stewart talking about the competence of the former president, Joe Biden. Listen to this.
I believe he was fully competent to serve.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
That surprises me, actually.
No, I do. There's a distinction to be made between running for president and being president.
So she's suggesting that he was competent to be president, but not competent to run for president. And I'm kind of wondering, who's she trying to kid?
Yeah, exactly. If you're a liberal or a progressive and you've lost Jon Stewart, you've really been on the bad side of things, don't you think? I mean, the tone of incredulity in his voice was apparent. Look, he was not up to the job. We knew he was not up to the job. It was clearly defined after he had that terrible debate performance. She benefited from it. But why continue to tell us something that we know is simply not true? He was not up for the job.
Right. So James Carville weighed in on all of this and thinks that it's time for Kamala Harris to get off the stage. Listen to what he said.
I'll be very clear here. No one that had anything to do with 2024, no Democrat wants to hear from you. Not Hunter Biden, not Harris, not Tim Walz, not the consultants, not anything. The 2024 has left such a lingering bad taste in Democrats. We just get out of the way.
Now, Kamala Harris insisted the other day that she's not done, but I'm thinking she might be cooked. What do you think?
Well, I happened to be with James Carville yesterday at a financial services conference, and if you think he was pointed on that clip that you showed, you should have heard him in person. Absolutely, Democrats are not going to want to hear from her again. She spent $1.7 billion. That's about 35% more than any other Democrat has ever spent over a 2-year campaign. She spent in 107 days, and they don't want to hear from her again. She is kidding herself if she thinks that she can run for president again and be a serious contender. She is going to have to earn her way back into elective office, and that meant running for the governor of California. She's ruled that out. I think she is done. There's no way Democrats are going to turn to her in the future.
All right. Well, we'll see if somebody's got a fork somewhere. Carl,
yeah.
Good to talk to you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, John.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.